Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inner World podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Pedro Cortina. In this podcast, we aim to explore the most powerful, efficient, joyful, and sustainable models of inner transformation out there. Thank you for joining us today. Let's talk about attachment today. This incredibly human experience based around a strong need to be close to someone or something to a level that gets in the way of our clarity, our individuality, our peace of mind, our capacity to live in joy. So it's a very interesting thing in the human psyche that it's not a matter of wanting to be with others, wanting to hang out with others. It's not a matter of appreciating others. It's not a matter of understanding clearly that, life is better when it's shared. That's clear. That's not really where I want to point to. Where I want to point to is more to that experience, that human experience where we basically cannot function. Because the object of attachment is removed from us, because we lose it, because we do not or are not able to enjoy it as much, or we are afraid to lose it as well. So this experience of attachment, what it does is it really moves our focus of worth outside of who we are. And this is, I think, the key of the issue. It moves the essence of who we think we are, our worth probably, our understanding of the enjoyment of life. It moves all this outside of who we are. It deposits it in someone else or some other thing or element that is not self-contained. One of the origins probably of this very, very human condition is this survivalist apprehension around just making it, just being able to live with resources and capacity to thrive. And that's understandable. It is understandable from a primordially survivalist perspective. And when out of balance, when exaggerated, this sense of attachment to someone or something tends to take over. And when we are when we have misplaced our source of contentment, our source of peace, our source of trust into something or someone else, we would generally end up having a very difficult time. And it's not because it can't be done. You know, many people invest their entire lives into trying to secure that source of attachment or that object of attachment. And they try all sorts of trickery to tie them up. Strategies like unnecessary or too demanding commitments, or relationship transactionality. What do I mean by relationship transactionality? It's this very, very common phenomenon where we kind of do these tacit agreements where, you know, in a relationship, you know, I give, you know, these two whatever, you know, I'll give this consideration and that consideration in exchange for your consideration around this or your consideration around that. And this generates hugely complex and fragile, very, very fragile emotional constructs that we hope would become or we hope that they transform into a basis for long-lasting or healthy connection or relationship, or in the case of being attached to things or experiences or status, this particular status. And the enormous mistake we humans do around this is not understanding clearly. And in Buddhism, this is something that it's fairly explored and clearly understood, in Stoicism as well, that the object of desire is, or the object of attachment is necessarily out of reach, necessarily incontrollable, necessarily we cannot colonize it, we cannot own it, we cannot form a structure of entrampment to actually keep it. It's just clear that no matter what we do, no matter what trickery we use, no matter what covenants, no matter what contracts, no matter what transactional agreements we agree, there is no way that we can secure this object of attachment, be it a person, be it status, be it riches, etc., because it is not within our capacity to control. That's it. It's not within our capacity to control. And so basically, according to these traditions, there are two ways to live in the world. One is where you are endo-referenced. That means your reference for who you are and your sense of self comes from yourself. Endo-referenced. You are someone that's endo-referenced. And the other option is you being someone who is exo-referenced. So someone that is referenced by things outside as our source of worth, peace, and safety. So much of the training that is suggested in these traditions is one of first clearly realizing the impossibility of ownership of any element that is not within ourselves. Any individual, any amount of riches or status or anything that is outside of us cannot be consistently and reliably kept. It can be for a while, and in many cases it is. But when this happens, also the cost is pretty high, because the risk of losing the object of attachment is always there. Even if we have plenty of riches, the risk of losing them is always there. Even if we have a stable and long-term relationship, the risk of losing that relationship is always there. And I'm not talking necessarily about, relationship ending because of, being deceived or someone moving on, or it's just things that are utterly out of our control, like, death, accident, sickness, grave misunderstandings, grave moments of confusion, grave conditions that allow for relationships to not continue. So the key element, I believe, in these philosophies around what would be a viable way to live, a way to live that is whole, a way to live that is enduring, is one where we have this clear understanding that there's no way to keep there's no way to be sure that we will keep, or there is no way that we will completely eliminate the risk of losing someone or something. And so then the sense of worth of who we are is something that we need to move from the outside to the inside. And what does this mean? This means developing a healthy, powerful, clear sense of self. One in which we are able to give ourselves the resources that we need to function as whole human beings, as human beings that can move in the world without being distraught or broken by the rejection or the loss of some object of attachment outside of us. And again, as I've probably made clear already, we are not talking about a life of isolation, or a life where we live in fear of loss or betrayal or bankruptcy. We're talking simply about a way of living where we clearly understand that we cannot cage anyone or literally anything on our own terms, or even in negotiated terms, with absolute certainty. And when we endo-reference, when we self-align, when we ourselves become the source of this worth, of this understanding, of this experience or sense of inner safety, then we can actually connect with the world. Then we can actually offer ourselves to the world as self-sustaining, complete, individuals. And this is where relationships truly happen. Relationships truly happen when we are in positions where we have taken care of ourselves first, when we have found the grounding of who we are unshakably and in profound understanding of that condition, and then as we ideally relax into that understanding, this is not something also that needs to be held or secured, or because then that becomes a form of attachment. It's more when we are able to find this grounding of who we really are, then we are able to actually relax into that. And as we relax into that, things start to make sense in a way where we are not needy, we are not dependent, we are not tied to, in a negative way, to resources or people around us. So in today's world, of course, this tends to be a little bit complicated because this is not something we're taught, this is not something we're shown, this is not something that is clear or modeled to us as well, probably by the relationships that are around us. Generally, what you see out there in media and in the great majority of human cases of interaction that we are exposed to is, the traditional high attachment model, where we consistently try to secure and guarantee the object of attachment to be there for us or to be there with us. So this is a gradual change, and the change starts by our own self-exploration. We're not going to be able to detach the anchors that we have created and deployed to try to secure other things or other people. We're not going to be able to let those go if we do not have a profound clarity of what is it within us that we can trust. What is it within us that really points to who we are, right? So the first thing to do in this path of transforming attachment into a viable, sustained way of living with others is to first begin an exploration of who we are. And when that happens, generally speaking, the first things we need to start looking at internally for ourselves are the wounds we have experienced in life. And for some people, these wounds are, tremendously big blocks, internal blocks. For others, not, even if they've experienced hardship. Hardship is not what determines the level of trauma or burden. It is our interpretation or our response to what happens that actually sets up the dimension or the size of the trauma or the burden. So in doing that, as we start our exploration of personal growth, would be to clearly identify the bigger blocks that move us naturally into attaching to others, and that those could probably be experience of loss when we were younger. Loss of people, loss of value, loss of respect, loss of appreciation, and start by addressing those. And some of the ways that we can address those is to actually going back to the moment where, the challenge happened, and realizing that probably at the moment when the challenge happened, we did not have the resources or the capacity, given our age probably, or our experience, or probably our knowledge of life. We did not have the capacity to be able to deal with that situation in a way where we ended up not carrying pain or sorrow or shock probably, or sadness, or whatever form of burden that we may be carrying, and then looking at it with a fresh perspective of who we are right now, and allowing ourselves to provide ourselves with the resources and the capacity to understand what happened from a perspective of an older, more mature, more clear individual. And one of the things that some models do to address this, for example, inner child work, or internal family systems, or parts work, or psychosynthesis, is to reparent these parts of us that ended up carrying the pain, or ended up carrying the burdened experience or the trauma. And by the word, the concept of reparenting probably is not something that works for everyone, because some people, some of us have issues with our parents. So the idea of reparenting may sound a little bit concerning to some of us. So resourcing, unburdening, actualizing. So, we could use these words. So unburdening, actualizing those parts of us that ended up carrying the pain, and actualizing them to who we are today, who we are right now. How would have we handled the burdening event or the traumatic event now, and then what resources would this part need from us to actually be able to let go, to actually be able to let go of this burden, to actually be able to understand what happened, to actually be able to contextualize what happened, to actually be able to, in the end, hopefully, let go of that tension that was created at the time. And if we do this consistently, and by consistently, I mean, on a daily basis, hopefully, kindly and gently and eventually surely, we will be able to unburden our system, unburden our the aspects of us that get in the way of being ourselves the source of our own trust, being ourselves the source of our own understanding, being ourselves the source of our own clarity, of our own confidence, and moving our attachment tentacles from the outside and connecting them to a secure, grounded, clear, compassionate, understanding sense of self. And so that's the first step, you know. Heal thyself, becoming our own reference in terms of internal safety and being able to support ourselves from that space. When we move our center of worth from the outside to the inside, there's wonderful changes that come about, incredibly powerful ones. And when we get good at this, our lives really, really transform and change for the better, because we are able to self-resource. So we're able to function without enslaving ourselves to external things, status, or people. And at the same time, as a resulting natural, effortless move, we now then have the capacity to interact and relate to things and other people outside of us in a way where it is about enjoying the connection, where it is about not a transactional structure that we're supporting, but more of a self-sustaining, free offering, compassionate offering that generates this sense of wholeness and this sense of self-trust and self-endurance from which we can draw consistently. So when it comes to attachment, and particularly forms of attachment that get in the way of our joy, that get in the way of our understanding, that get in the way of our clarity, that get in the way of our capacity to live a fulfilled life. When this happens, when we are able to garner those capacities, then we're able to relax into genuinely connecting with others, genuinely appreciating others, genuinely loving others, genuinely understanding others, and genuinely providing space to whatever life brings. And that is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful space to live in. Thank you for joining us in this exploration today, and all the best in your quest. See you next time.